Welcome back to the dopest show you won't get sick of. I'm Spencer. This is Sasha. Spent most of my 20s in federal prison, but I've been off heroin since April 9, 2010. Got a lot of stories about the stupid stuff I did to get put in prison. I've also got a lot of stories about the crazy stuff that happened while I was in prison. And God forbid you end up in prison. I want to make some of the same mistakes I made, so this is actually important. I've got something to say for the people who've been watching at the end of this video, but at Petersburg Medium, I saw some of the most unassuming monsters you'd ever imagine. In an entire lifetime, you would never guess some of these people capable of the things they were capable of. Now, it can be one thing in a number of things, people being incapable, but these certain people there, at Petersburg, it's a programming place. So there's two units. One unit's the RDAP drug unit. You do the program, you get a year off your sentence, you get 6 months halfway house. The LCP program was a religious unit that if you completed that program, you got 9 months halfway house. Now, that doesn't mean that you do your time, then you go to a halfway house, and you do 9 more months. It means you get let out 9 months early to go to the halfway house. So, yeah, it's a good deal. The drug program, you're getting out 18 months early. People are going to do it. And they're going to transfer people from other prisons to Petersburg because not every prison has these programs. So, seeing as that, there's a number, if you're from, the East Coast, there's a good chance if you were in the feds that you'd end up at Petersburg to do a program at the end of your sentence. But what there also was 40% chomos. 40% from all over the country. That's about 800 people, okay? It's a good many of the people that are there are just local. D.C., Maryland, Virginia, the Carolinas, Kentucky, Tennessee, and West Virginia. Get sent there just because it's close to home. Some people for the programs, and some people for the assault program, which is the Chomo program. So, a lot of the time in the feds, like I said, there aren't SNY or protection yards, so they put people out wherever they get charged at, as I understand. And when they get beat up or shanked out west, then they send them to Petersburg. Also, some gang dropouts. Usually, if somebody wasn't from the area, you knew they were there for a reason. Now, I didn't know that when I first got there. I didn't know that. I was like a 23-year-old kid, was clueless about it. I started at the low. The low security didn't have that weirdo program. There were some weirdos there, but wasn't anything like the medium. I got in trouble, sent to the medium, had to spend 2 years there. Now, during the time I was there, it absolutely amazed me because you think about somebody that do something like that, you get a certain particular image of them. Being around them, like in Pill Line, that was one of the biggest places where I found this out. And there's one particular one I'm getting ready to talk about, but Pill Line is where you have to stand in line to get your medication. If the slow guy's working, it takes an hour, and morning and night. So just standing in this line, you hear people talking to your left, to your right. There's one guy who was a preacher. He was a preacher before he went to prison. He always ran around with a laundry bag full of law books. And you'd hear him advising people. He was very intelligent, very articulate. You'd never, ever guess this guy. This guy got caught because 2 kids broke into his house and robbed his house. They stole a number of items. Among those items was a tape recorder with some cassette tapes. The kids decided to check out the cassette tapes. And on the cassette tapes, the preacher was doing unspeakable things to younger people of his church. Now, the kids could have kept quiet. They just robbed a house. They'd get in trouble, right? They did the right thing. They told their parents. Parents told the police. The police did an investigation, I'm guessing, from the tapes. They found some of the victims, talked to them, but it wasn't really a lawful search and seizure, so the videos, I don't guess they could have been used. So I guess that's why he went around doing the law library thing, trying to find a loophole to get him out. It's possible he could. I mean, it's an unusual circumstance, but I hope he rots in there, and I hope he rots for eternity after he passes on and burns. That's what I hope. But just hearing him talk and how articulate and everything else, you'd never guess this guy, okay? And you wouldn't guess a lot of these people. It's also why I did not go to church when I was there. I'm not going to have, a pedo leading the prayer circle that I'm holding hands with, because that's a lot, that's really a huge way. A lot of these people found their victims was through religion, through the church. One in particular that was the worst, that I can't believe he isn't serving a life sentence, because he's done the same thing in 3 different states, in Nevada, in California, and in Utah. He'd go to a church, and he'd find a woman that he'd have an interest in her sons, younger sons. He'd move in with the woman, and yeah, that was how he did his thing. He did it in 3 different states. This is the 3rd time he's in there. I believe he got 30 years. And you hear all these people, because in the program they make them do, they pass out each person of their paperwork, from what I understand. And they all talk about each other. So, you hear, oh, that guy's in here for this, that guy's in here for that, and you hear every detail. I have so many stories and so many details of so many different monsters, I can't even tell you. Hundreds. Because everybody talks about it. You know about it. And there were some people that you'd never guess. Now, Yogi, thank the Lord, if he does get out, looks like a freak now. He's gotten all these Buddhist and India tattoos on his forearms, and he's got a bald head with a rat tail coming out of the middle. It's a religion called Hare Krishna, and he walks around chanting Hare Krishna. Even in prison, he found him a punk, a boy, whatever, that looks like a kid. He looks like he could be on the, poster of Boy Scouts. And so that was what he's doing in there. So, but yeah, where he looks the part now, there's not all these people have a mark on them. Some people look the part. You just look at them, and it would make as much sense to leave your youngins around them as it would Michael Jackson. You know what I mean? But some people, you'd never guess. I've talked about it before when I first got there. Made friends with the dude who had been in college. I looked this up after I got out. It was like the first Facebook case ever. It was a guy who was a college student when he got his charges, and basically the story was that he either hacked a Facebook account or made a Facebook account pretending to be a good-looking younger girl. And he'd message young boys and that were in high school and be like, yeah, I'll do stuff with you, but first you gotta do stuff with my friend who's a guy. And they're like, okay. And then they'd show up at his apartment. They'd be like, well, where's the girl? Oh, she'll be here later. Come on in. And yeah, that's what he did. Now, this guy blended in so good. I'm not just some sort of an idiot, to end up being friends with this guy for a couple weeks when I first got there. It was the other Asian fellas that were there that let me know about him. And, I let him know about himself once I found that out. But he was at Gilmer, West Virginia, which is a pretty serious medium security. He wasn't just laying low. He wasn't just surviving. He wasn't just blending in. He was in the mix. He had the most successful ticket. Now, what a ticket is it's gambling. See, they pass out these little pieces of paper that are the size of a receipt. You circle your teams. You put some money down on it. That's how you bet. He was the ticket man. He was making a tremendous amount of money off gambling. He blended in that well. He fit the part. And he had his whole backstory. Now, yeah, and he was there doing that. Of course, it gets exposed eventually with these people, but it kept happening over and over again. People I'd associate with, and there's not a person there that didn't go through this. There's not a person there that didn't have people that they associated with that they didn't eventually find out the truth about them. An interesting thing talking about that was when I first got there, being a young white guy in this place, there weren't a lot of options for friends, and there was this group of people that hung out, and it was 3 people, Max, Ghost, and Bull. Max was Aryan Brotherhood at the time when I first got there. He got kicked out of it later. Now, it turned out he was on the registry, but he had a statutory case, and he ended up marrying the girl. He was a few years older, so that's not as bad as the others. Ghost was in there for robbing banks, allegedly. Looked that up after I got out. Turned out it was like dollar stores and like gas stations, but he burnt down a house on the other side of town before he'd do the robbery. So on his paperwork, it showed he had like $1 million restitution for the houses he burnt down, but he made it sound like that was for the money he stole. Turned out he had pretty vicious crime before that, but it wasn't the one he was in there for that time. Bull, I was friends with him for a minute, and some people speculated on it, but I never knew for sure until after I got out, and I had to look it up. He had such a good story because he was native. He didn't look like a lot of the other natives. We had like 200 natives there, not a good representation. Most of them were the ones that got stomped out, out west and sent there. But he had a buzz cut. Most of the natives had long hair. Now, his story was he was an alcoholic. He was in a car with somebody else. He says he doesn't think he was the one driving, and that's why he's always in the law library trying to disprove his case. But he got in a DUI accident, and it took the lives of 4 people. and he got 6 years per person. Sounded legitimate. If it's on reservation ground, it's a federal crime. So I bought it, I believed it, as did tons of other people. Turns out on his wedding night, or the day after the wedding of a woman he married, he was caught putting his clothes back on around somebody he shouldn't have been, coming up out of the basement. And that's what he got charged with, and that's what he's doing his time for. That was another person. Now, there were a lot of people that blended in. They blended in oh so perfectly. A lot of the white people, it was easier to spot them because, they didn't seem like normal criminals, dorky, middle-aged men and stuff like that. So they were easier to spot. But other people, some of them, it was all but impossible to. There's one guy in particular at the low. He was half native but was claiming full-on native, and he always talked about the white man this, the white man that, and he'd say, your people did this to my people. And I'm like, man, my people didn't do nothing to your people. My people came over here, way after. They came over here, like, in the early 1900s. And my people didn't do nothing to your people. Don't put me in that category. Do that to me. But he was so hard on it. And he talked about how he was going to live, off the grid and all this other stuff, and about how he did his state time, got out, and they recharged him federally for the same thing, and it was a weapons case and all this stuff. And the natives have cool names. One of them's name was Takes the Knife. So when they call him over the loudspeaker, they'd say, Takes the Knife, report to so-and-so. Well, he had a native name, but when they called his name at mail call, they said a different name. And I'm like, how's that work? He gave himself a native name, and he blended in well. Nobody would have guessed him, but I couldn't help but look it up after I got out, and the main reason is this. There was a way to spot these people. In prison pictures, dirty pictures, nothing completely unclothed. It can be very minimal, like dots over here and like dental floss down there, size garments is acceptable. These pictures that are like pictures that you print, just that you have of your family, they get sold for $1 to $5, and there's picture men usually were some messed up people. They're usually really weird and, obsessed with it. They'd have these albums, and they'd go door to door trying to sell them. You couldn't help but see it. People pass these around. Every day when they did, if you don't want to go to dinner at 5 o'clock, they have rec move, and you go out to the rec yard. From my window at the medium, they had this area, this cement area that 100 or so people would congregate around. The picture guys would always be out there, and 50 to 100 people be trading, selling these pictures. Now, a lot of guys got normal pictures, girls that had implants, all that. There was one trailer park girl. It's called Next Door Nikki. Some of the pictures they had of her, she was actually standing in front of a trailer. That's normal. I mean, looks like, trailer trash stripper, but that's normal for people to look at. Big old implants, looks developed, everything else. Had 2 paw prints tattooed on it, and I had a roommate that was always like, that's not a real Nikki picture. Look, the paw prints aren't there. And I'm like, dude, come on, you sound like a weirdo. But, it wasn't anything, like the other people. They have other stars, adult stars, that look underdeveloped and have braces. They're meant to look younger than they are. Those were hugely popular among the weirdos. Now, a way that I spotted a lot of these people that nobody else did, a lot of these people had such good cover stories. A lot of these people had such good backstories that you would never be able to tell, and they didn't seem like it. They seemed completely normal, like people you'd like and people you'd hang out with. Whenever the picture man came around, a lot of times they'd be like, oh, no, but sometimes they couldn't resist it. While normal people are looking at, Jenna Jameson type looking pictures, Pamela Anderson type looking pictures, these people that seem normal, that have the story so put together, when they go through the picture man's pictures, they get stuck on these pictures of these underdeveloped, with braces looking pictures, and you're like, what are you looking at those for? I saw the picture and I felt like I was guilty just for looking at it. Like, I felt like disgusting after just seeing it. But those are the pictures that they were looking at, they were interested in. It's like they couldn't help it. Like eventually some sign was going to come out. Now, being as how there were so many people like that, there were so many people that got exposed and uncovered. There were people that were at the top of certain, gangs and certain groups that had a history, and it's the reason they were there. And rather than laying low, they got in the mix there at Petersburg, and they got exposed sooner or later. Max, even though his wasn't really like that, since he ended up marrying the woman, it still doesn't count. It's you are or you aren't. And he got right in the mix, right in the Aryan Brotherhood mix, and it was like a serious thing, and that was a big deal. Man, he had to get probably 4 by 4 foot of tattoos covered up in a week's time, which your body can only take so much of that. Your skin's an organ, and when you get that many tattoos, he got sick, and that was a whole big thing. I've got a story about that I've told before, but it amazed me, because some of these people, you can't say it, and it's changed my outlook forever. I'll never look at people the same, because there's some people in there that just had me so fooled, that had everybody so fooled. And you would never in a million years guess they were capable of what they were capable of and did what they did. Some of the stuff was so heinous and terrible. There were so many of them there, they even had a shot collar. That they weren't about nothing, they never did nothing, but it made them feel good that they had numbers or something. It was a joke. They got made fun of, beat up, extorted, everything else. I was terrible because I would do pranks to them. Being like 23, I did like college pranks, but gone too far, like involving like urine and stuff like that in their toothbrush, stuff like, especially at the low where it was like a dorm set and it was easier to get on people, and it's something that's messed me up though. I will never look at people the same, because imagine being friends with people and finding out that your friends were vicious predators. You would not. It changes how you think. There were so many of them. It was so crazy, and I've got so many stories about each individual one. The preacher one was a crazy one, and that one was pretty wild. But that's also why I did not go to church there. They went to church, and it was like it was their comfort place, and it felt like that was like their preparation for getting back. Also, I had 1 of 7 TVs at the low in Carolina Hall. The first TV room on the right and the right side TV, or 2 TVs in there. The right side TV, I wouldn't let them put Law and Order SVU on there. I noticed they like to watch that. They loved that show. They loved that show. I didn't allow it. No. I felt like they were getting ideas, on how to get away with it, and that was something. I put a stop to that. In that TV, we weren't going to be watching that anymore. We didn't the rest of the time I was in there. But yeah, it's something that's completely stuck with me and completely messed me up. I can't even explain it to you. Like, imagine just people, somebody in your daily life right now. You don't know what's going on in people's head and what certain people are capable of. You think you know certain people, and then you find out, and it's like mind-shattering. It just messes you up. Anyway, if you liked the video, press the like button. If not, that's 18 minutes and 51 seconds of your time, and which you'll never get back. Something I was going to mention, just a couple people asked me about email, social media, stuff like that. On here, I'll respond to as many comments as possible. I live a secluded life. I have 8 contacts in my cell phone. Literally 8 contacts. My coaches, my family, that's it. And I only talk to about 2 of them on a daily basis. I live in this box of pretty much just training and coming home. I don't have a social life. I'm really boring. Incredibly boring. I train obsessively, then come home. That's it. I do this because it's a way to keep myself safe. I'm very high risk. If doing and it's just rules that I've set for myself. If I wanted to go use today, I wouldn't know who to call. It would take me all day to find somebody to get something, probably overpay, probably run around town for hours, and probably get half of what I was supposed to get for the money. it's a way to protect myself. There were a few years ago, somebody who was family that about got me roped back into stuff. I do this for my own protection. There are people that have been friends of mine that I was best friends with in prison that I haven't contacted in a couple of years. Part of it is because of probation. And I feel awful and guilty about that. And I know it's unusual. I know it's odd, but I've seen I will respond in like novel-sized comments to people. Last week's been a little difficult where I've been sick, but I usually do with any and all ways that I can help in any way, shape, or form. But it's just a personal little box, personal little rule. I discussed it in the video 44 friends I've had have died under the age of 35. And it's just what I do. So it's no offense to anybody personally. It's nothing personal. I'm not just picking somebody to not talk to and to ignore anything like that. But on here I will answer in depth as best as I can any comment that I possibly can. But I live this odd little secluded boxed off life, and it's what works for me. It's the less stressed I've ever been. It's the best I've ever felt, and it's the least risk. And it's what I do because it's what works for me. I am one line away from losing everything. It'll be robbing drug dealers next week. You're going to have to call the fire department, the ambulance, and the police. You're going to have to call everybody. There's another video I'm going to do this evening. It's going to be a really good one. Plan on getting it up. It's one about some pretty wild stuff that I plan on doing. The one that I'm particularly planning. So be looking for that. But anyway, I hope you liked the video. Y'all have a good one.